I'm Kevin Hammer, and my co-host Melissa Carley is with me.
Hi guys, how are we doing tonight? Everything's going well.
We have a good show. I'm Kevin Hammer, and my co-host Melissa Carley is with me
tonight.
Hi guys, how are we doing tonight?
You said that we have a good show. We have a good for everyone. I'm Kevin Hammer, and my co-host Melissa Carley is with me.
Hi guys, how are we doing tonight?
I think that we definitely have a good show going on for everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we actually have Turd Flinging Monkey will be with us this evening. Now, for those of you who are not aware, Melissa, actually, why don't you give the intro to Turd Flinging Monkey?
Yeah, sure, I'd be absolutely proud to. So, Turd Flinging Monkey is probably one of the more prominent voices on YouTube regarding the men going their own way phenomenon, also called the MGTOW phenomenon. And I thought it would be interesting to have him come on the show and explain to us what it's all about, what the MGTOW movement's all about, or not movement, the phenomenon.
Awesome. I think that'd be great too. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to us stream on the radio station, please feel free to go to our Twitter account anytime throughout the show. You can send us questions, whether for Melissa, myself, or our guest. That handle is at Straightish Talk, and that's straight 8, so it'd be at STR8ish Talk. And Melissa, want to tell them where they can find us on YouTube?
Yeah, you can absolutely find us on it's called the MAGA Network on YouTube, and you can follow us there. If you want to get the video feed, right now my ferret chewed through my camera, believe it or not, my camera cord. So I'm dealing with, yeah, I have to deal with the ferret later, but you can see Kevin's pretty face.
So, oh my goodness. So my week has been interesting. New York State had their primaries before we get going with Turd Flinging Monkey, because usually we don't start with our guests until half hour into the show, but we're working on bringing that, bringing Turd Flinging Monkey in a bit sooner. I just wanted to mention quick, my state, we actually had our primaries here in New York, and we had one of the most entertaining Democratic primaries, which was between Andrew Cuomo and Cynthia Nixon. So that was very, very interesting for us New Yorkers.
I mean, I would imagine that's a bit like watching retards fight.
Well, when I watched the debate, it was great. It was amusing. It was amusing. It made me very happy to say, and I'm a registered Democrat. I've voted Democrat my entire adult life, but trust me, it made me very much secure in my decision to vote third party this year when it comes to governor. Yeah. Because watching it, one of my jokes with it, and I know I'm not the only one that had this little joke, as corny as it is, I really was. I was like, it was the most entertaining episode of Sex in the City ever. Andrew was as condescending as he ever is. Andrew Cuomo was during the debate, and Cynthia Nixon, interrupting constantly. What was interesting, because he actually didn't interrupt her. I will give him that much, although he had some really stupid moments, of course. But every time a question was directed at Andrew Cuomo, she'd interrupt with calling him, anything from criminal to fraud to, all that stuff. A dino, Democrat in name only, pretty much. Well, she didn't specifically use that terminology, but she definitely was going at him every chance she got. And to me, I looked at her and I was like, is this honestly what you're doing? This is your opportunity to really get your views out there. To really put yourself out there and let the people of New York know who you are beyond your celebrity status. And all you're doing right now is taking this time to interrupt and constantly attack Cuomo. As big of a dick as he is, this is what you're deciding to do. Mm-hmm. You're coming off like a child, and it just... Yeah, so instead of taking that time, she spent the whole time doing that, and he was just being condescending. And it was funny, though, because Andrew Cuomo called himself a liar, and it was really amusing because Ben Shapiro noticed this as well. And while I'm watching the debate, I was like, ooh, well, that didn't come across the way you thought it would. At one point, Cynthia Nixon says to Cuomo, because he asked, when are you going to stop interrupting me? I believe that's what he said. And she goes, when you stop lying. And he goes, I'll stop when you stop. Now,
wait a minute. Wait a minute. He literally used the "I know what you are," but so like.
Yes. He did
that?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, he did. Like, if you watch it, it's hilarious.
Oh goodness.
No, seriously. He goes, when are you gonna stop interrupting me? And she goes, when you stop lying. And then he goes, I'll stop when you stop. Pretty much. So, basically, first of all, childish.
Yeah.
And second of all, you're admitting then to lying. Because you said you'll stop lying when she stops lying.
I mean, more important question, Kevin. Who are you going to be voting for?
I actually, and I'm not afraid to say this, I will be voting for Larry.
Who's Larry Sharp? He sounds familiar.
Candidate.
He sounds familiar, doesn't he?
Familiar? Oh, I only wish we were streaming out on YouTube when we had Larry Sharp on. Because that would have been amazing. However, he is running for governor of New York State. He's not his name isn't out there on everyone's lips yet, but definitely I am, as someone who lives in New York State, I'm working to help change that. And above all, he talks about a lot of issues that I feel resonate across the board with voters, from Democrat, Republican, Independents. For me personally, one of the things, he's the only one really speaking out about the SAFE Act, which, for those who aren't aware, here in New York State, the SAFE Act is one of the most ridiculous anti-gun laws in the nation. It really is. So, yeah, it's actually, just one component of this that drives me nuts is if someone feels that you're mentally ill or whatever, they can actually report you. Like your therapist could report you, and you could have your guns taken away. You could be stripped of your right to bear arms just because someone says, oh, I think this person's mentally ill. Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. And what annoys me the most with those kind of laws, when people say the mentally ill shouldn't have guns, I'm like, but you realize how large of a net you're casting there, right?
But
hey, having OCD.
But hey, if you don't share your feelings and you don't get mental help and lose your rights, you're toxic masculinity. So
toxic, I know all this. Oh, and are we gonna have toxic masculinity on here tonight? Are we?
Probably, but it's gonna be delicious. So
it's gonna be delicious. Well, my favorite joke with that, right? Is that when I joke about toxic masculinity in relation to the gay community, we're a community of men who are attracted to men. Masculinity isn't toxic to us, it's delicious. Anyway, so I know it's a little bit earlier than we usually do it, but do we think we're ready to have Turd, Flinging Monkey come on now?
I am absolutely ready. Turd, Flinging Monkey, you're with us?
I'm ready. Are you with us? PST's not quite with us yet. But we are working on getting him with us. So a little bit more about Larry Sharp, though.
Just real quick, Kevin. We're having.
Yes.
I'm just gonna let the audience know we're having some sort of sound issue. We're TFM. When you get it figured out, feel free to just chime in when you get it figured out.
Oh, absolutely. Feel free, especially if Melissa's talking, interrupt her. She absolutely does.
Wait a minute. No, princess. You're the one that uses a lot of words to say nothing.
So she's bringing a lot of toxic femininity to the show this evening, and so please do feel free to interrupt her. What do you mean? What's going on?
So now I got word that you're trying to work having Larry Sharp's lieutenant governor come in. Is that correct?
This is something. I don't want to go big into detail. It is something that I reached out.
But we could give a little teaser, right? A little teaser.
Yeah, Andrew Hollister is running for lieutenant governor. with Larry Sharpe on the Libertarian ticket, and I've had the privilege of, meeting both Larry Sharpe and Andrew Hollister in person. And what's interesting enough for me, and this was actually one of the first things, it's not the only thing, because mind you, anyone can just say that it's pandering, which absolutely, I mean, all politicians pander and all that stuff. So, but it was very unique is that Larry Sharpe has traveled all throughout New York State, and not just the main large cities. He has actually traveled to the little towns that no one knows about, out where I'm from. Those, basically one street town, you blink when you go through it. Larry Sharpe has visited those places, and he's listened to the people's concerns, and he is not afraid to take difficult questions. He's been on Joe Rogan's show. He's also been with David Rubin on David Rubin's show as well. But anyways, his Lieutenant Governor, Andrew Hollister, has a lot of passion as well. And one of the big issues that brought him onto this, when I had the chance with him, that he told me was the Second Amendment, was gun rights. That was one of his first issues that got him involved in politics. So, and it's interesting because not even the Republican candidate.
We got a YouTube question for you. My only question for for gay beard guy is the guy running? Yes, is the guy running for small government and end social programs?
He is running for small government, most assuredly so, and to end social programs. Yes, that he's not a fan of social programs. He's actually, his approach to education is very interesting, and I would recommend it. I could not word it as well as he can. He words it several times, reiterates it during his interview with Joe Rogan, actually. Because Joe Rogan, it just isn't sinking into Joe Rogan's head. And I'm a fan of Joe, overall. But this one, he really didn't seem, it just wasn't sinking in. And Larry was like, okay, for the fourth time, I'll explain it. And pretty much what he's talking about is a complete restructuring of it, so the education system.
Well, I mean, we got to talk. Him and I got to talking about the education system extensively, and my position is, if it's something we have to pay for, it needs to be revamped for the modern era instead of this this industrial
yeah, well, that's the thing,
this industrial age education system. So
which I will admit, I'm not a parent, I'm not a teacher, I'm not the most educated on the current state of the education system in New York State. I am very well aware that it's broken and not working well. And one of the things that Larry Sharpe wants to do is, right now we're top heavy in New York State when it comes to, school administration. So what Larry Sharpe wants to do is cut that down a great deal. So he's not going to necessarily invest more money in education, but he's going to be freeing up money in regards to education by getting rid of unnecessary positions. Because there's no reason that the administration in schools should be larger than the teachers.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't have multiple principals.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous to have that much. He really wants to give more power back to the teachers and back to the parents when it comes to making decisions that affect their children, in regards to education. So that's a brief summing up of what Larry believes. As I said, I would recommend checking out his interviews that he has done so far. Our interview with him, it does replay periodically. We have that on MAGA1Radio.net. But as I said, you can also go to Joe Rogan's channel, and you can also go to Dave Rubin's channel and see the interviews that he did with both of them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if that answered the question well enough, but yes, I am voting for Larry Sharpe in regards to New York State government. So,
Well, it's a step to the right wing.
It's a step to the right wing. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Don't worry, I'm going to get you there.
You're going to get me there. Oh, what is it with... I don't deal with conversion
okay.
Melissa.
Check. Okay, so I don't know how much control you have over TFM's sound, but see if there's something we're missing on our end, because he says it's working on his end. Yeah, he's saying it's working on his end.
Let me check.
Yep.
According to my system, it looks like his mic is operating well.
Does he, do we have a method for him to call in?
Oh, there he is.
Now you hear
there
me?
he
Okay.
is.
Yeah, we can hear you now, TFM. Welcome.
All right. Hello. I have no idea what I sound like.
No, you sound fine.
Okay. All right. Yeah, this is a program I haven't used before, so I had to try all kinds of different stuff.
No, well, I'm glad you got it working. What'd you do? Cuss at it enough to get it working?
Well, I have a virtual mixer, so I basically had to bypass my virtual mixer and go directly to my microphone, and then turn the volume all the way up. Just crossing my fingers and trying to get something to work. So as long as I'm not too loud, I guess it's working now.
Yeah, it's working. Maybe if you could turn it down a little bit, it's distorting on the upper end.
Okay. All right. Let me.
Oh my god. Yeah, it's working.
Oh,
Maybe if you could turn it down.
I got some feedback on my end. Okay, there, it's done.
I turned it down. Is that better?
That's much better. Yeah, you're not distorting now.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, I didn't know if it was a volume thing, so I was like turning everything up, trying to get someone to hear me. It was like screaming into the void. All right, so I sound okay now? All right.
Sounds great. Well, regardless, welcome to the show.
Hello.
We're glad to have you.
So,
now...
Oh, no, I was just going to fire the first question. If you don't mind.
Okay, go ahead.
Absolutely. So your body's ready, okay. Just, so if you were to read the mainstream media about the MGTOW phenomenon, and depending on who you go to, you guys are either, the men going their own way phenomenon is either a bunch of people that are feeding into what the Zionist Jews want them to do, or you're far-right neo-Nazis. So in your own words, what is men going their own way, and what's it all about?
All right. Yeah, so just to I turned myself up a bit because some people were saying I was a little quiet, so I hope I'm not too loud or distorting.
You're good.
But all right. So basically, let me back. Let me answer the question before you ask the question. So you're talking about how certain people call MGTOW like a Zionist Jewish conspiracy designed to, keep the white man from reproducing, to cause white genocide, and then you got people on the left. It's a big misogynist hate group that hates women, stuff like that. So basically, everyone hates you, and there's a reason for that, because on the left you have feminism, and feminism is basically a bunch of it's women who want free shit. They want men to pay for it, and they don't want to be responsible for themselves. And the only way that works is if basically men fall on the sword, pay all the taxes to pay for all their welfare and social programs, and sit out. And then on the other side, on the far right side, traditionalists also.
You're breaking up, TFM.
Sacrifice themselves and get nothing for it. But oh my goodness, am I too loud again?
No, it's like it sounds like lag.
I'm actually hearing him fine.
Oh, okay, maybe it's on my end.
Yeah, I'm actually hearing him pretty well.
I don't know. This program is cancer. This is cancer. So traditionalism is basically right-wing feminism. Rather than, bowing down and serving women, this demand, it's basically sacrificing yourself for the good of the family. But unfortunately, the modern family structure doesn't work anymore because men have been stripped of all their authority. So basically, they're just asking men to just sacrifice themselves and die for nothing because that's just what men do. And if you don't go along with the program, all they can do is shame you and call you names. Hence, like all the crap about white genocide and white babies and everything. So, what is MGTOW in a nutshell? Are men who surveyed the landscape, they've looked at the situation between men and women, and they just decided that it's not worth it for various reasons. The primary reason is men have been stripped of all authority. They have absolutely no power in a relationship with a woman. They're at her mercy. She can destroy his life for any or no reason just because it's Tuesday. And so, having seen that and seeing how little, not only is the deal getting worse and worse, it's like Empire Strikes Back. This deal's getting worse all the time. But at the same time that's happening, women are becoming worse and worse partners for men. They're offering fewer and fewer, benefits while demanding higher and higher prices. So just like, the Fight for 15 stuff where these people want $15 an hour to flip burgers and they're getting replaced with robots as a result, women are demanding just endless crap for nothing. They just want to sit on their ass and get paid to do nothing. Maybe squeeze out 1 or 2 kids in their lifetime, and that's it. And they want everything for that. They want the world at their feet. And just like McDonald's, we're replacing them with robots. We're like, no, we don't, you offer nothing. I'm going to replace you with a robot. But instead of a touchscreen, it's a sex robot.
Well, I know you're a big proponent because admittedly, I've been watching your content a lot for the last probably 2 months. And I probably have watched over 2,000 hours of your content just by listening to you while I was at work. So, and that's partly why I asked you to come on, because you're articulate and you're funny. So,
thank you.
And you're
see if I could change the audio.
And I'm not, I'm not trying to blow, I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass, but you're well versed in the topics that you do talk about, and you're not a bullshitter is basically what I'm trying to say.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And the reason I wanted to give you the opportunity to explain what MGTOW is if I were to go to the feminists, I don't, well, one, even if I had a watch on my hand, I wouldn't trust them with the time of day. I don't think they're capable of telling the truth.
It's not that they're incapable, it's that the truth doesn't mean anything. Words are spells. They're meant to get a desired result. So they'll say whatever gets them the desired result. If you ask them what's true, they're not going to tell you what's true. They're going to tell you what gets them the desired result.
What, do you have an example?
Well, all you got to do is try to debate a feminist. You have facts and statistics and evidence. You present your facts and statistics and evidence, and rather than even acknowledge these facts, statistics, and evidence you presented, they just immediately change the subject, call you a misogynist, a rape apologist, whatever, because their goal isn't to find out the truth. If they cared about the truth, they would actually consider your facts and evidence, but they're not interested in the truth. They're interested in what benefits them and gets them the desired result. So when you show them counter evidence, their response is to call you a name or to read really loudly or to just make up some bullshit to make you go away. That's their goal. They want you to give them money and shut up. Just give them your money and shut up. That's what they want. Anything less than that is you hate women.
Well, yeah, I think you got a point, because in some colleges they've moved to where they have, there's college pays for the females' tampons and their pads and stuff like that, and that money doesn't come from a void. It's coming out of the tuition of everybody. Oh,
it's not just colleges. It's all of society.
Mm-hmm.
All of society. Men are the net taxpayers. Women are the net tax beneficiaries. They live longer, so they benefit disproportionately from retirement programs like Social Security and Medicare. If they work less, so they pay far less into the system. And all the programs are geared to benefit women. So, in fact, there are departments of the government that exist just to shower money upon women. The only programs that men can take advantage of are gender-neutral programs. There are no programs specifically for men. But even those gender-neutral programs disproportionately go to women, who, again, aren't net taxpayers. They don't pay the taxes. Mm-hmm. They're about half the labor market, but they work in low skill, low paid jobs because they're either on welfare or they have a husband or a baby's daddy paying support or something like that, taking care of them. They don't contribute to society. They just take money.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have questions for you. So because it's nice to meet you. I actually had not heard of you until Melissa suggested. I actually really hadn't followed the MGTOW very closely. I mean, I had heard about MGTOW. I heard things from both sides. I hadn't really made judgments so much one way or the other. So I did recently, though, I watched some of your videos, some of your content, some specifically labeled with MGTOW, some of your streams with guests, people you were talking with. So a few things, though. You pretty much... One of the things that was referenced there was women gaining the right to vote. Now, you basically, from what I got from that, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is that that's pretty much one of the worst things to happen to Western civilization?
Oh, yes. Because here's the thing, it's not specifically giving women the right to vote. It's giving people who don't bear responsibility for the authority they're given rights in general. But specifically why giving women the right to vote was horrible was because women are, by default, in any society, the majority of the population. Because it's men who die in war, it's men who die earlier due to natural causes. So in any given population, women are going to outnumber men. In fact, one of the only cases where this isn't so is China. That's only because of the one-child policy where parents were drowning their daughters because they were only allowed to have one kid due to the government. But under normal circumstances, women outnumber men always. Because of men dying in war and so forth. So once you give women the right to vote, you've now basically made it impossible to reform any laws without women. Women can stop you. They can veto any reforms, any laws you try to pass. Now, keeping in mind that women didn't earn their rights, they're not responsible for their rights, and their biological imperative is to have security at the expense of freedom. They don't care about freedom. They want security. Their biological imperative is to get resources flowing to them. So what sort of government are they going to vote for? They're going to vote for a massive socialist welfare state, which is what happens every time women are given the right to vote. And because women are the majority of the population, you stop them. You can't even slow it down. That's why the government only gets bigger. It hasn't gotten smaller since Coolidge.
So you said you said that women haven't worked for it, and I definitely want to challenge here because I'm thinking of a lot of questions that would be asked. And as I said to those listening, whether you're on this YouTube, whether you're watching us on YouTube, or if you're following us on the radio station, please do feel free to message any questions that you have, whether it's at Twitter at Straightish Talk or here on YouTube in the chat. Now. I guess, though, okay, so you said that women didn't work for the rights. Now, a lot of people would respond to that, well, there's a pretty well-documented history of women fighting for the rights that they gained, such as the marches and some women even dealing with acts of violence against them as a result of their efforts to gain the right to vote, to gain the right to own property, to, gain the right to work to go into the workforce if they did not want to just get married. So what's your response to that history?
All right, women march doesn't mean anything. That's not earning your rights. For example, black soldiers fought in the Civil War. They earned their right to vote. Black men earned their right to vote by fighting in the war. Men were given rights because of World War I. That's when they earned the right to vote. What war did women fight in to earn their rights?
Well, keep in mind, for the longest time, women weren't allowed to fight. There are documented cases of women who dressed up as men.
Right. So now in the current year, what war? Now we're not the wars aren't even that bad anymore. Women still, even in co-ed militaries like Israel and Canada, where women do serve in the military. In fact, Israel, there's a draft that applies to women as well. 96% of combat troops are still men because women can't make the standard. So here's the thing: it's not a matter of women wanting to earn their rights. They're biologically incapable of earning their rights. They are reliant on men for survival. It is men who they have to go to war. They have to go to war. If you send women to war, you're sending them to their death because they will be fighting against men, and they will be destroyed unless they're backed up by so many. Unless they outnumber the enemy 10 to 1, they're gonna get their asses kicked.
But you just mentioned yourself that war has changed. It's not as much of the interactive on the field war. So does that then address that issue? For example, if war is now fought more so with drones, a man or a woman could, fly a drone, for example. So
a woman who serves in the military and who is in a combat role, not an administrative role at back in the States pushing paperwork, goes to the war zone, does something actually dangerous and puts her life on the line, she's earned her right to vote. But women in general have never earned the right to vote. And on top of that, they are still, to this day, wholly dependent on men. They're not responsible for themselves. And if men are going to be responsible for women, they have to have authority over women, because you can't separate authority and responsibility.
Mm-hmm. So question, because this argument feels a little bit going in this direction, because mind you, for example, a number of men haven't serviced. I actually couldn't serve because of health conditions myself. I was interested in joining once, but because of health issues, asthma, hypothyroidism, I wasn't permitted to. And also there was a don't ask, don't tell policy in place, but still, health issues would have prevented me regardless. Now, though, would you then advocate that any men who haven't served in the military also not be able to vote? Are you looking for somewhat of a Starship Troopers there?
Let me explain. Okay, so I have a system. Oh shit. Okay, I cut you out a little bit. No. Okay, so I do have a more detailed explanation. So here's what I advocate. You have to be a net taxpayer to vote for Congress. If you're not paying more into the system than you're taking out, you don't get to vote for congressmen, because congressmen control the spending. If you're not a net taxpayer, because this prevents people from voting themselves other people's money. If you're not a veteran, or if you're not signed up for the draft and maintain a ready reserve status, which means you maintain, height, weight, fitness standards, and so forth, you can't vote for the president, because the president wages war. And then we need to get rid of the amendment where the senators are, popular vote elections, go back to them being appointed by the states, which empowers states' rights. So those are the three reforms I would make. However, none of that happens as long as women vote. Mm-hmm. So step 0, before we fix anything else, we have to take the rights away from women, because they'll just outvote men. We can't have a rational conversation about anything.
I mean, like, so,
I don't know. Go on, Melissa.
Like, you and I came to the same kind of conclusions, just through different paths. Like, for me, it's, you came through the lens of this MGTOW philosophy, and I came through the lens of just abolishing the welfare empire, is what I call it. And I've always had a lot of criticisms about universal suffrage, and in one of those criticisms, like me, I don't even think it should be a net taxpayer thing. Like, if you've been to, because the concept of public service for full citizenship is hardly a new concept. I mean, the Romans had it, basically.
Children don't vote. There are people in our society who we recognize as human beings, who are citizens, who have human rights, but don't vote. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about making women property and taking away their basic human rights, but unless you're the key is responsibility. We need a society which rewards responsibility with freedom and authority. And if you don't demonstrate responsibility, you don't get freedom and authority. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Use healthcare as an example. If you say, the government, take care of my healthcare, well, now you're inviting the government to pass laws restricting what you can do in your body, because they're paying for it. If you want other people to be responsible for you, you're ceding your freedom. You can't tell them, pay for my health care, but I want to destroy my body.
Well, that's actually when I get into arguments with lefty trans, I call them, right? Left-wing transsexuals. They're always all about their universal health care, and I'm stridently against it. And they're always like, well, why? Why are you against it? Blah, blah, blah. Well, that's basically my criticism to them is, if I'm paying for my own transition, nobody else in the world has a say in the matter.
Exactly.
I don't have to go to the Beltway government and beg them to take care of my transition. I don't, I can just give them all the fucking bird and just take care of myself.
Yep.
So
I agree.
I have a quick question that I wanted to interject there, though, because, all right, so I get what you're saying in regards to the qualifications you should be able to meet before voting. So,
Right.
question then. Why specifically then just strip women's right to vote? Why not just strip everyone's, and then anyone who meets the standard can then vote? And then another thing, for example, adding women to the draft. Would that...
Well, okay, so... Right, so women can't meet the standard. If you look at countries that have a universal draft, the United States is kind of unique in that we lower the standard for women, but other countries don't lower the standard for women. Only 4% of women can actually pass the standard. So even if you have it, look, if you have a strict meritocracy, men will be on top regardless. So if we now, but at the end of the day, let's say we go with a meritocratic system. So let's say 4% of women can actually keep up with the average man, which is statistically the average. So 96% of the people who get the what have you are men, 4% are women. I'm fine with that. However, women will piss and moan. So like the bumper sticker kind of summary of my plan is take women's rights away, because that's going to be the end result. However, I'm fine with women who put in their time and put forth the effort to earn their rights. I'm fine with giving them the rights if they've earned it, just like I would be fine having men who've earned their rights. But there's another aspect to this you have to keep in mind, and that's fertility. If you look, there's been studies, there's been papers, there have been articles talking about how when women are forced to keep up with men, they go infertile. They spend their prime fertility window in school, trying to get educated to keep up with the men. The long working hours and the stress of working causes them to lose fertility. And then the women in the military who push their bodies physically drive themselves into infertility as well. So in order to have a sustainable society, you need a fertility rate at least at replacement level. And there is actually, I mean, I know there's moral and ethical considerations, but when you empower women, they have fewer kids. This is universal. I have numerous studies to prove this. But empowered women don't have kids. This is why the West has a below replacement fertility rate, and why pretty much everywhere where you have patriarchal societies, even within American Amish, where there's a nuclear family and men have authority over women, you have a high fertility rate. When you give women power and authority, even in Muslim countries like Iran, perfect example, they're a Muslim country, they're far from like liberal, and yet because they allow their women to go to college and have careers, their fertility rate is below 2, which is below replacement. So if you want a sustainable society, you have to restrict women's opportunities, otherwise they're not going to have any kids. So there's the justice and moral argument of women haven't earned their rights, they're not responsible for them. But then there's also the consideration of having a sustainable society, you can't empower women too much or they stop having kids and you're dying. And then if they vote themselves a welfare state, which relies basically on a Ponzi scheme, we have to have more workers paying taxes to pay the benefits of the retirees. If you don't have a positive fertility rate, go bankrupt and destroy your economy. And that forces you to turn to immigration. And then the only countries having excess children are going to be patriarchal countries, like right now in Islam and in Africa and so forth. So they're importing their patriarchy into the West because we abandoned ours. And you look around and see the result. I mean, if women are going to be oppressed, I'd rather them be from Western men than from Muslims from Africa.
Well, I mean, so it's interesting that you bring up. It's interesting that you bring up fertility rates, because I could tell you when Social Security will most certainly die. When millennials retire. Because millennials aren't having kids. Study after study after study shows this. And the millennial generation is larger than the baby boomer generation ever was. And they're the largest voting bloc as of 2012. And what's going to happen is when all the millennials retire, because the oldest millennials are 36 years old, right? So when millennials start retiring in 30 years, give or take,
right,
you're not going to have the worker pool to cover this huge millennial generation that's now retired.
Right. So, but there's two things. So even if in 2035, when Social Security and Medicare become so bankrupt, they have to be abandoned. The problem then becomes, what is your Muslim population at that point? Right now in Sweden, the Muslim population is 8%. In the UK, the population is 6%. In the United States, the population is 2%. But it's going up because they're having all the kids. And because we currently have a welfare state, we currently have these entitlement programs, we have to import people because our native population isn't reproducing. In 30 years, if that look what's happening in Sweden. That's only 8% of the population. In 30 years, if the Muslim population continues to grow at the rate it is, we're going to have a serious problem even if we abandon the welfare state.
So I fully get that there, but I do want to keep us a little bit on track because I do really want to focus on, I think, what a lot of people will have questions around, which is around women in relation to men and the MGTOW movement overall. So you mentioned.
Oh, by the way, everything I'm talking about has nothing to do with MGTOW.
Yeah.
All this shit about taking women's rights away, that's not even MGTOW at all. That's just my personal little bugaboo.
That's your personal, and absolutely. Thank you for making that distinction, by the way. Making that clarification. Now, so you mentioned the 4% of women, right, that can keep up. My question is, so out there right now in the world, because mind you, there are very much conservative women who are anti-feminist. There are women who, see feminism even as a cancer, that they don't agree with social welfare programs, all this stuff. So there are women out there who I would say argue with me a lot of the standards there. Can you give us an idea of what this woman is? Like, is there a woman out there that you've seen speak, whether they be someone who's served in the military or a politician, or whoever it may be, that this is one of those women who's in the 4% that you're like, okay.
Right, okay, so there's a bell curve. You can see there's a bell curve for everything. So there are women at the extreme high end of the female bell curve who can actually go toe with the average man. Now, they can't go toe-to-toe with peak men. Like, the male bell curve is always going to be higher than the female bell curve, but they can hang with the average man. I'll give you an example. The world champion female soccer team lost to 15-year-old boys, but they did score 2 goals. They only lost 2-5. Now, the non-me's for the women lost to 15-year-old boys like 7-0, like in Australia. They got blown out. But the 15-year-old boys haven't even finished puberty yet. So they still have like 2 or 3 more years of puberty, and they've already leaped the best female athletes in the world. And also, for another example, the 100-meter dash. To qualify for the male 100-meter dash for the Olympics, you have to run faster than the world's record for women. So no one who's slower or as good as the fastest woman recorded even qualifies for the Olympics. Now, but we're talking about peak athletes. When you're talking about the average man, these women, like like Ronda Rousey, I'll use her as an example. So she was a big UFC fighter. People kind of joked about her, how she could beat a man. She could not beat the lowest ranked UFC fighter on the male division because those are athletes. However, I would bet Ronda Rousey could kick the shit out of your average guy who doesn't have any fighting training, just couch potato. She could probably beat an average guy up, but she couldn't beat a trained fighter up. So the 4% I'm talking about, they're basically better than the average guy. But the problem is there's so few, and they're only marginally better than the average, that when you're talking about dollars and cents and time investment and everything and the other thing you have to look at is if you invest your money into this 4%, a lot of that 4% are going to leave and go become mothers. We're seeing this in the medical industry, where women get all this money showered upon them to become doctors because, diversity is our strength. And then they leave the profession in their 30s to go be mothers, and all that time, and now there's a doctor shortage because they gave that opportunity to a woman in the name of diversity, and she didn't want to be a doctor anymore because she wanted to be a mother. And that could have been given to a man, but because of sexism, now there's no doctor there. And now we got to go back to the drawing board and train someone else.
Okay. Now now trust me, I actually get your arguments. I really do. So with this, for me, it's also a matter of discussing, like, for example, so you say those 4%, then, among them, they're going to leave as well. Specifically, is there a specific example that you have of that 4% in your mind, an actual woman that you can name? That you'd say, okay, you think she's as close to that 4% that would have earned that right to vote and all that stuff? Is there one, or have you not seen that woman?
Well, okay, so I mean, there are women who are net taxpayers. I think,
Mm-hmm.
there are wealthy women who actually pay a net tax and probably will never collect that money back in the form of Social Security and Medicare. So that's fairly easy. Now, as far as women veterans and women military, yeah, that's pretty spotty because most of them aren't combat troops because they can't meet the standard. But look, I'm fine. Like, the thing is, most men shouldn't vote either because they don't pay net taxes either.
Yeah.
Most people who don't demonstrate responsibility for their country shouldn't have the power to vote themselves other people's money. If you don't have skin in the game, no one should give a shit about your opinion because you don't have any skin in the game. You shouldn't be voting for wars you're not going to fight. You shouldn't be voting for spending you're not going to be paying for. It's one thing to say, oh, we want to help the poor people. It's another thing to say, would you like your taxes raised $2,000 to help the poor people? Those are completely different questions.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, like my point of view is very similar to yours in that, yeah, I think the universal suffrage is bogus, and if you're not contributing to society, I don't see why you should be voting what goes on. I mean, we already do this with criminals, right? Convicted felons,
right?
Like you're
they're
obviously
talking about giving felons. They're talking about giving felon voting rights again because the left wants to hold on to power.
We did just have pardons here in New York State. There were, violent offenders who were on probation who Andrew Cuomo pardoned, sexual felons who he pardoned, and now they do have the right to vote. So, yeah, that is happening, and yeah.
I mean, if you're a parasite in society, I don't see the validity of giving you the right to have a say how that society is operated.
Yep.
No, and I can.
That's my. And if you're, I'll just say it. Like, I don't care. People already call me a bitch the way it is. If you're lazy, stupid, or unable to contribute to society, you don't have a say in the matter.
Right.
The question is, what standards are you setting for what means contributing to society? Like, if you're working and paying taxes, is that your contribution? If you're working and, or if you're producing a product or whatever you may be doing.
Well,
I can answer that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So, you have to contribute more than you're taking out, because if you're getting more than you put in, then you've already received your reward. You have to contribute more than you're putting in. So that's why I say net taxpayers. So if you pay taxes, but you get all that money back at the end of the year in a form of tax return, or if you get all that money back in the form of government benefits, you're not a net taxpayer. You've contributed nothing to the system. You've essentially just churned your own money and had it returned to you. So you're not contributing. It's like if everybody throws money in a pot, but then they get their money back, they didn't put anything in the pot. The people who put the money in the pot, they're the ones should have a say where that money goes. Not the people who put their money in and then took it back out, because that's not their money. They took their money out. They haven't contributed anything. So I look at it as responsibility. When you are a net taxpayer and you're paying more into the system than you're taking out, you're demonstrating a responsibility to the welfare of your country, because you're basically sacrificing your money. Money you're not getting back. So that demonstrates responsibility. Serving in war and risking your life to defend the freedom of your country is demonstrating responsibility, because again, you're putting your life on the line. Mm-hmm. Having a job and paying some taxes but getting all of it back doesn't demonstrate responsibility. Just having a normal job, living a normal life, that doesn't responsibility to your country. What are you sacrificing? Like, I got into an argument a while back with someone who talked about how, well, women have babies. That's a sacrifice. No, it's not. Women have babies throughout nature. There's no sacrifice. There's no that's a biological process. And also, men take care of you and provide for you.
That's like saying taking a shit is a sacrifice. It's a biological function.
Thank you. I didn't have to say it. Melissa said it.
Okay, but the thing is though, now what many people what many people then say is that, okay, so let's go with your assessment. I do believe that, you know, that those who contribute to society should definitely be rewarded. Now, where specifically that is the right to vote, that is a different discussion. But the thing is, though, I guess a lot of people would then ask, why does this requirement seem more directed at women? Since why not just seem to apply that across the board right off the bat? Why specifically stress women? If you apply that across the bat, as you said, yes, the bell curve, you know, you'll probably have more men than women. But why just focus so aggressively on women, and why not just fight for applying this across the board? Why the focus on women?
I will answer. Okay, so when it comes to voting rights, you know, again, only net taxpayers and so forth, but a lot of men shouldn't be voting either. I don't believe in universal suffrage for men. However, now I want you to let's talk about something else other than voting. In a general sense, even no matter what tax bracket you're in, no matter how much or how little you pay in taxes, let's take away the welfare state. Without the welfare state, women are relying on men for their survival. That this is especially if you want to have any sort of fertility rate with a sustainable population. If women work, but most companies don't want to hire women because they're so flaky and because they leave to go get pregnant. So that's why the feminists have to pass laws forcing companies to hire women. If you took all those laws away, if you actually had a free market where people could hire and fire whoever they wanted, and you didn't have a welfare state, men would dominate the workforce, and thus women would be relying on men. So in any society, I'm not talking about voting rights, I'm talking in general. Women are relying on men for their survival. Men are responsible for women. To be responsible for something requires authority over that which you're responsible for. You can't say men are responsible for women, but men and women are equal. Because men, because of their position of responsibility, have to have authority. Thus, in any society that's functional, that has a decent fertility rate and freedom, you're going to have patriarchy.
Oh, I have this punchline. Like you're talking about bumper stickers. Mine is equality is bullshit. And it is. Like, there's no such thing as equality. Yeah. And what I mean by that is...
Screen 5.
Screen 5. No, and the reason equality is bullshit, here's why. I could buy a guitar and an amp, and I could play until the day I die. And granted, I'll get very good, but I'll never be Jimi Hendrix. Because some people are just born with a specific set of talents, you know? And if you take and to break this down into lines between the sexes, male and female, if you were to look at like the most a man has ever lifted versus the most a woman has ever lifted, I mean the difference is going to be night and day just based on testosterone.
Yeah, but that doesn't really matter. I mean, we're talking about organizing society, like in nature with animals, with no concept of government, religion, society, just animals eating and fucking and sleeping and just doing animal stuff together. When you have sexual dimorphism, where the male is bigger and stronger than the female, the men protect the family. That's you see this all throughout nature. The bigger, stronger males protect the females and the children, and in turn, the men are in charge. Because the women are relying on them. I mean, if you're relying on someone for their survival and they tell you something, you're going to listen to them because you need them to survive. This is the way nature works. Now, government and feminism have created this artificial construct where women have the illusion of independence because they have a police state that's staffed by men. They have a welfare state that's funded by male taxpayers to give them the illusion that they don't need no man. But as soon as the government runs out of money, nature is going to reassert itself. So patriarchy is inevitable. There is no situation where feminism keeps their rights. Women will lose their rights because it's completely against nature. Once the government runs out of money and the welfare state's gone, women will submit to men. So let's just keep it that way and have a functional society.
I mean, let's just put it point blank. Feminism is a social construct, or you know. I think
feminism is a social construct.
I mean, no, and what I mean by that is I mean, you call it the bonobo protocol, but this idea that that women.
I did watch that video.
No, but this idea that women can contribute as much to men as men in a given society is completely socially fabricated, and it's enforced by government. You know, without the government, without the government, feminism collapses, and all the BS that goes along with it disappears overnight. And what you're left with, and what you're left with, is a bunch of men that are bigger, stronger, and smarter.
See, no.
Well, and even if you created an egalitarian utopia where women, you basically force women to step up and be responsible, so they work just as hard in university as men. They got jobs. They applied themselves. They worked the same hours as men. They served in the military along. I promise you, they would drive themselves to infertility. Mm-hmm. And so all you've created with this egalitarian utopia is a society that will only last one generation before it dies. So just like communism, like everyone loved Chavez when he took over Venezuela and gave all the money to the people. Everyone was hailing Venezuela as like the new model for society. And now they're eating out of garbage cans. So if it's not sustainable, it's a bad idea. Egalitarianism, under ideal circumstances, doesn't work because biology. So it's a bad idea, just like communism.
So with that note, I do want to say, though, usually we do breaks a little bit earlier on. I think we're going to take our first break, and we're going to make this one a bit of a longer one, so about 7 minutes, and then we'll be back. Because I actually have some questions for you. I have some anecdotal. I'm going to be straightforward. I have some anecdotal things that I want to put out there, and I'd love to hear your input on that. Most assuredly so. Please don't hold back. But then I also have some other questions as well, and I hope that our listeners have questions as well. Once again, if you're watching us on YouTube, please feel free to comment with those questions. Any of us would love to answer them. And if you are following us on Mago One Radio, which is at mago1radio.net. Please feel free to send us a tweet. That our Twitter, the handle is at Straightish Talk. That's straight with an 8, so it'd be at STR8 ish talk. So we're gonna take that first break, and we will be back very shortly, ladies and gentlemen. So you guys ready for the break as well?
I am.
Yep. My body's ready.
Okay.
My body's ready.
Your body's ready. All right, and we got some background schoolhouse rock music for you people, so we're going to take you back a little bit. So listen to this, and we'll be back in about 7 minutes. minutes, took advantage of it. I know Melissa always does. So rude of her. She just always abandons me during these breaks.
You know what? I gotta pee, okay? I can't help it.
Why 7 minutes?
Because
Is that just like
we gotta go for 7 minutes in heaven. No, no. It's generally we have breaks. We start off with a smaller break, then we go to the larger breaks. It's just our breaks are supposed to be in general every 15 minutes. We do usually try to get them in, but we've been having such a fascinating conversation that I didn't have that opportunity. We do it more so for the sake of our for the radio station itself, because we play songs and stuff during that time. So, and sometimes some promos. So that's what they're hearing on the radio station. If anyone is on MagoOneRadio.net, they heard the music during that break. So that's generally what we do. Plus, it breaks up a little bit, especially since we're a 2-hour show. That 7 minutes gives someone a chance to run to the restroom. You know, all that good stuff.
Wow. I'm used to holding my pee in for 3 hours, so we're good.
Well, I mean,
goodness, why are you torturing yourself, child?
I mean, it's my test.
The show must go on.
It's my testosterone blocker. It shrinks my bladder. Okay. Gotta go.
So now to come back with, first of all, what I will admit is I said anecdotal, but also, you know, some questions to follow up after that, and I really want your input here.
All right.
So okay, first of all, I will admit, growing up, I grew up very poor. We experienced like the local factory closed down and both my parents were put out of work. I did come from a home where both my parents worked. They met at the job, actually, that they worked at until the place closed down. And there were times, because I know we're talking about intellect and, you know, we're talking about physical strength and all those. These have been focuses here in regards to men and women. And as I said, I want to stress, I know this is anecdotal. But for example, in my home, my father did wind up being the primary breadwinner after that, because he got a job after the factory closed. My mother's health at the time, unfortunately, declined. She was a diabetic. So she couldn't continue with that, but she still helped him out when he got older and did Meals on Wheels. She went around with him, organized it. She actually handled the financing, the paying of the bills, you know, finances in general. She handled that, and he did rely on her a great deal for a lot that she had to contribute. And when that factory was open, her income in combination with his did allow us to get through some very difficult times. So I mean, I don't know if I just grew up around a lot of women that I consider 4% material, I guess. Mind you, coming from the country, my mother was baling hay when she was 8 years old. She was driving the tractor. My mother was from the mountains. It's a very type of woman. I will admit, since moving more to a city environment, I do see a little bit more of the dainty, oh, I can't do that. Or, you know, when I was working in retail, I worked for building grills and patio furniture, and one woman was like, oh, my nails. No, I can't do that because of my nails. And so, it's very odd. I don't know. My personal experience with a number of the women in my life, I honestly, I see them as, a number of them as very highly intelligent. And to be honest, I know a number of women who are much even harder working than the men that than some of the men I know, and have contributed a great deal more to society. And they also, you know, they're, you know, just overall, they seem better suited to make it by in this world without being reliant on another person. So what about those? And do you have any women in your life that you would describe in a similar fashion, whether it be mothers, sisters, aunts, you know, cousins, whatever it may be? Do you? That's actually a question I do want to throw at you then, since it relates to my experiences. How is the relationship, which I'm sure you've probably been asked this, but with the women in your life? And I'm not just talking dating wise. I'm not talking about any issues you've had in the dating world, but like those family ties as well.
All right, you're going all over the place. So let me back up.
I know. Back up to what I know. I threw a lot at you. I do apologize. It's how my mind tends to work. So take it as you see fit.
Okay, so I think you misinterpreted kind of the point I was making. So your parents, as well as previous generations, they lived in a different era. Now, in that era, women couldn't just sleep around and wait until their late 30s, early 40s to think about having a family. Women back in the day got married in their early 20s. They had 3 or 4 kids, all that stuff. Those days are long gone. So, people who compare, like, well, my mom was X or my grandma was like X. That doesn't matter because that was a different era. See, the problem isn't women. Not only do I not hate women, I don't even want to change women. There's nothing wrong with women. The problem is society has changed, not women. Women are fine the way they are. I wouldn't change anything about them. But the only way to have a sustainable society with stable families and what have you, you have to have consequences for particularly negative female nature. Things like hypergamy. I don't want to throw too many terms at people who don't know what I'm talking about. But there are negative aspects of male nature. There are negative aspects of female nature. For example, men tend to be more violent. They tend to be more domineering, stuff like that. Women, they tend to be more materialistic, more selfish. Like there's different male and female nature has a good side and a bad side. It has to be harnessed for the good of society. We've done an excellent job of harnessing male nature. We punish bad behavior. We used to reward good behavior. So men don't kill and rape because they don't want to go to jail and get their shit pushed in. So we punish negative male behavior, so it disincentivizes men for acting on their negative impulses. Women used to be disincentivized from acting on their negative female impulses by society and culture. But thanks to feminism, everything is off the table. Women are not allowed to be shamed. They're not allowed to have any sort of consequences for their negative behavior. Men have to step in. A woman turns 40 and can't even have kids anymore and put a ring on it. Otherwise, he's not a good man. And basically, feminism has liberated women from all of, again, their responsibilities, and yet they demand that men continue to maintain their responsibilities for no benefit. Now, that's not women's fault. It's like I wouldn't blame a spoiled child who turned out to be a piece of shit adult. I'd blame their parents for not whooping that motherfucking ass when they were a kid and letting them turn out this way.
So I do want to, first of all, thank you for clarifying in regards to time frame. Because if you did mention it, I don't recall you mentioning that specifically, that we're speaking about modern women specifically. I mean, I know...
Well, it's not really so much modern women. Modern women aren't... They're a product of... Basically, imagine a parallel universe where parents were forbidden by law to discipline their children in any way. They couldn't put them in a corner. They couldn't use their voice to them. They couldn't do anything to them, or they would be arrested for child abuse. And so the children ran society, and the parents were in fear of being thrown in prison if they did anything that upset the child. What sort of society would that be? It would be fucking insane. But is that the children's fault, or is it whoever created these laws and whoever empowered children at adults' expense is their fault? I wouldn't hate or blame the children. They're acting within the confines of the environment that we created. And the thing is, what I just described with parents being afraid to discipline their children in any way, that is the Duluth model. It is domestic violence for a man to withhold any money from a woman, to restrict her from in any way. If a woman beats a man and he defends himself, he goes to jail as the aggressor because he has a penis. So we have literally passed these laws which strip men of any and all ability to have any way to control women in their own house. And they can run everything, and they can destroy a man's life for any or no reason. And that is it's not women's fault. I wouldn't blame the children if stupid laws were passed that gave them power over adults, and I don't blame women for these laws either. I blame the people who passed these laws and created this society, which is why my solution is to change the system. I don't want to strap women down to a machine and brainwash them, turn them into zombies. I want to take their rights away, that the natural order of society can be restored and everyone can be happy.
I mean...
Okay, no, and... okay, go, Melissa.
No, it's... you kind of already... you already have that. You were talking about, the parallel universe. Well, that kind of parallel universe also exists in the millennial generation. There's this YouTuber named Bill Whittle. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah, no, I know Bill Whittle.
And he had a monologue that he did on the millennial generation, and he goes, it's really hard for me not to to stop because he's like, I have to stop myself from blaming them because it's not their fault they turned out the way they did. It's the fault of the people that raised them.
Right.
So you do got this kind of alternate universe.
Well, but here's the thing, though. So even if we all admit that this society is sick and we need to fix things, the problem is, like, if you lived in this parallel universe where children were in charge and you decided to get with the other adults and be like, look, we need to get rid of these laws, we need to restore parental authority over children, you then have to make the difficult action of actually doing it. You could talk about it all day, but then at the end of the day, you have to actually do it. You have to take children's rights away, restore parental authority, and fix society. And children are not going to like it. They're going to kick quite the fuss. Now, take that same scenario. Yeah, men have to take women's rights away. That's the only... You have to. If you don't do it, Muhammad will. Someone's going to do it. It's just a matter of, are you going to be around to see it, or are you going to be, thrown in a mass grave and someone else is going to do it for you because you didn't have the courage. That's the future. But it's a difficult thing to ask people because just like parents love their children, men love women. They don't want to hurt women. They want to make women happy. But it's gotten so out of hand, and no one knows what to do because there's no easy fix. There's only hard, tough decisions and tough roads to actually fix this problem. Like a lot of people say, we just need to educate women. We need to convince them to give up these rights that they shouldn't have. But have you ever tried to convince a spoiled child to voluntarily, go to bed early, not eat ice cream, give up their toys? They're not going to do it. You can't convince a spoiled child to do it. You have to be an adult. You have to be the parent. You have to take their privileges away, send them to their room, and thank you for it at the time. But once they realize, like, you care about them, you're doing this for their own benefit, because you care about them, you don't want these bad things to happen to them in the future, they will thank you later. But at the time, you have to just do what has to be done. If they piss and moan and scratch and yell, you have to your parental authority, and then hopefully when they grow up, they'll appreciate what you did.
Well, I mean, Gavin McGinnis brought this up in a interview or a TV show or something. I can't remember what it was, but he cited a study that showed that women who pursue the more traditional female role are happier in their life than women are who go chase these dumb careers that ultimately don't mean anything in the HR departments. I mean, that's been my criticism of females is, people are like, you're awfully misogynist for wanting to be a woman, blah blah blah, and I said, well, it's because it doesn't make sense to me. Like, either way, you're out in the world gonna please a man. That's what you're out doing. Either.
Well, can I ask you a personal question about your transition, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Did you begin your transition after puberty, during puberty, or before puberty?
After puberty.
Okay, so that's why you've been cursed with this rational brain because of puberty. That's why you thought.
Well, I mean, what doesn't make sense is that you're out. Is that they're out pleasing a man. Now they have a choice. They can either go please some corporate goon who doesn't give a shit about them other than they're a worker, or they could go out and please their husbands and their families, and they're choosing the corporate goon, and I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, okay, the reason why women choose career, choose everything other than family, is because women value security more than freedom. They think that they're going to get a career, and also they don't understand biological fertility. They think that they can go to college until their mid-20s, start a career, and then their mid-30s, late 30s, early 40s, now that they're established in their career, now that they finished their degree, now they're ready to have kids. And you tell them, your womb is closed. Like, you're not having kids. You waited too long. You should have had these kids 20 years ago. But the thing, women are on a different timetable than men. And this is even true in puberty. Girls start puberty at 11. Boys start puberty at 13. Girls are essentially fully mature at 16. Boys aren't fully mature until 18. The way we measure teenagerhood and adulthood is based on the male maturity cycle, not the female maturity cycle. And studies have shown that women are like peak male attractiveness is age 50, because that's when men earn the most. Between 45 and 55 are men's peak earning years, and the number one thing women want in a man is money. So men in their 50s or late 40s, early 50s are the most desirable men. The most desirable women are 18. 18 to 24 is peak female market value. So in an ideal world, if you match the number one top 10% women to the number one top 10% men, you'd be talking about 40-year-old men dating 18-year-old girls. People don't want to admit that that's how biology works, but that's how biology works. And what you have is you have women who they want to date older men until they get old themselves, and they want these older men to marry them, but the older men they keep dating younger women. So these women were dating 30, 40-year-olds when they were in their 20s because they had money, and then they turned 30 and 40 thinking these 30, 40-year-olds are going to marry them, and they just turn right around and start dating 20-year-olds again. It's like, bitch, this is what you did. What did you think would happen?
So I do want to say something, because I will admit and this is where I admit personal bias and also personal disconnect, right, to this discussion. I think part of also one of the things I have a personal disconnect with is, obviously, as a gay man, I will never experience that type of relationship with a woman. The dynamics of a heterosexual relationship will certainly, I mean, I observe my parents, of course, but as far as actually experiencing it myself, those dynamics will forever be lost to me, because I'm sure there's a hell of a lot that my parents didn't tell me about in regards to their relationship.
Cherish it. Cherish it. Cherish the badass.
So I'm sure, so I will acknowledge my disconnect in that path. And I do look at modern heterosexual men, and where, especially during my activist days, it was definitely instilled in me to have a resentment. I do look at heterosexuals now, and heterosexual relationships, and I'm like, oh my goodness, being a man now, I mean, you're not sure whether or not you should pull a chair out for a woman because she could appreciate it, or she might consider it an offense because she can pull her own damn chair out. That just sounds messy as fuck to me. I wouldn't want to deal with that. So I'll be fully honest, I actually have sympathy towards heterosexual men at this point, when especially with modern feminism. I'm not just talking about historical feminism, but modern feminism, when you have issues like, when you're bringing up words like mansplaining and manspreading, sitting with your legs apart because you have balls between your legs. So absolutely. So I will admit I have that disconnect. But also I think part of that is the fact that I also, as a result of that connection with that community, and I had been an activist so long in the community, I fought for marriage equality and all that stuff. I knew a number of lesbian couples as well. So I got to see a number of women who very much survived on their own without men and all that. So I understand that I'm definitely coming at this from a different perspective, which I know you also cover a little bit of that. I've watched a couple of your videos, and this brings me to the next thing I wanted to talk to you about, because I did find this fascinating. When you were talking about one of the biggest downfalls is the male sex drive. And before I jump into that, I just wanted to say that where I did connect with that is I've known a number of men in my life, family especially, where they're with a woman who's absolutely horrible to them, in no way is good for them. And I'm like, what keeps bringing you back? And I'm like, okay, I look and I'm like, I guess you find her objectively attractive. So this is where I do think men need to take more control of their sexuality in regards to their sex drive, so that it's not leading them into stupid decisions. Now, mind you, gay men can fall to that as well, but I mean, really specifically with heterosexual men, because I have known a number of women, even friends of mine, who will fully admit that they use male sexuality as a way to manipulate men. But I wanted you to reference that in regards to your views on the male sex drive, because that was one of the most recent videos I actually watched of yours. One of the videos I actually watched earlier today, and I found that quite interesting, your perspective on that.
Okay. Well, okay. So, just speaking on like gay and heterosexual relationships, there's actually an interesting dynamic. So, gay male couples have the least amount of domestic violence and have the most sex. Like, gay male couples will have sex 5 to 7 times a week, and there's almost no domestic violence. Heterosexual couples will have sex twice a week, and they're kind of the baseline. Lesbian couples are the most violent, and there's even a phenomenon called lesbian bed death, where basically they just stop having sex. like they get carpal tunnel or something, and they just can't do it anymore. And so
the scissors break. Oh my god, no, sorry.
right, you know how the scissors breaks off the plastic handle and everything. Anyway, so the thing is the male sex drive is very powerful, and I make this joke that the reason why men have such a powerful sex drive is because it's nature's way of ensuring humanity doesn't go extinct. Because if men didn't have this powerful sex drive, they wouldn't put up with women's shit, and humans would go extinct a long time ago. Nature had to nerf men's intellect. In fact, there have been studies which show that when a man is aroused, his upper brain function shuts down. Like, nature has to make men stupid in order to cause more humans to be bred, because that's how crazy it is. That's how taxing it is to deal with women. So again, cherish the man ass. Don't you dare take it for granted.
Never.
So, and also, I do want to say one thing. The LGBT movement, specifically gay men, have done more for men's rights than men's rights activists have. Men's rights activists have been an abysmal failure. They haven't gotten a single law changed. However, gay men have actually gotten laws changed which benefit straight men as well. So, objectively, gay men have done more for men's rights than any other group.
Like, what right are you talking about? What law are you talking about?
For things like basically like usually bachelors are discriminated against. Gay men have fought against those laws. Things like adoption, because the thing, like a lot of MGTOW want to have families, but they don't want families with a woman that's going to take their kids and half their shit away. So they thought about like things like using a surrogate, hiring a woman to basically bear his children, but then leave, go away. I want to have my children now. Now, prior, that was illegal. You know, men could, in fact, in some countries it's still illegal. But gay men have actually fought for the right to basically have surrogacy without a woman. So because of gay men, straight men who don't want to be involved with a woman can now also do things like adopt and hire a surrogate. And also, there was even a time, I don't know if this actually happened, there was a southern state talking about abolishing marriage altogether because they were so against gay marriage, they'd rather get rid of marriage completely than allow gays to get married. And I'm like, oh, please get rid of marriage. Do it. If that would have happened, I would have given like a donation, like every gay charity, like thank you, you did it.
That actually brought me to a question, because this actually makes me think of something Melissa always reiterates on, which Melissa often speaks of. You know, the poorest functioning children are single mothers. You know, come from single mothers often. That's a statistic that I know Melissa has mentioned quite often. So, what is your feeling then, though, in regards to that? Because you're mentioning that's one of the things with MGTOW in regards to single fathers. Do you have an argument that single fathers would do better then?
Well, okay, so the data, here's the problem. Children...
I'm not sure if there's even data on that.
Well, no, there's some data, but it's very small, because you have to understand, for a father to get primary custody, the mother has to be such a piece of shit.
I understand,
there have been women who are drug addicts, who are sex offenders, and they still get custody of their kids. So for a woman to actually lose custody for kids, to be the primary caregiver, it's such a small group, it's impossible to base any statistics on. However, looking at domestic violence or child abuse, the child abuse survey, this is per capita. The most dangerous place for a child in terms of child abuse is single mothers, then followed by mothers and fathers together. Again, this is per capita. Because single mothers are the most abusive, then mothers and fathers are the second most abusive, then mommy and her boyfriend are the third abusive, then mommy's boyfriend, then fathers, and then others, like coaches and Catholic priests and stuff. So out of that group, single fathers are at the bottom of single fathers at the top of the list. I mean, and this is per capita. This is adjusted for the population size.
I mean, I was raised in the unicorn situation, and what I mean by that is like I was raised by a single father. I was, and he had to work. He busted his butt, you know. But he always found time. Like, he wasn't abusive at all. I mean, yeah, we got a belt across the ass whenever we screwed up bad enough, or we got, hit over the back of the head. When we said something stupid in public, you know, it was just like, whack, knock it off, you know. Because I was raised by a single father, I think that it had a great deal to do with the way my politics have molded over the years. So,
Melissa, would you argue with that experience then? And this is kind of, because I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. That's definitely something I don't want to do. Would you argue, though, because we were talking about men being just naturally more dominant by nature, would you argue that men then would just naturally, not always, but on average, naturally have more ability to bring structure to a single parent situation than a woman would?
I mean, yes, especially with teenage sons. Like, a boy grows up a boy grows up, and at a certain point, the mother is not going to be able to overpower him physically. It's just not going to happen. And what age that is, I mean, people can debate that. I'd probably say, I mean, based on my nephews, I mean, my nephew is 14 and he's already 5'8". I mean, he's a big kid, you know. And I mean, I know I'm short, I'm 5'4", but still, he's like 5'8". He's a big kid and he's still growing, and he's, you know, he's already much stronger than his mother. It gets to the point where a mother will not be able to physically dominate a teenage boy. A father, on the other hand, will always be able to, at least till they're fully grown, always be able to dominate a teenage boy. Always. And I mean, they call it old man strength for a reason. Like, I wouldn't want to get...
I don't think it's...
Go ahead.
I don't even think it's strength. I think it's... There's two things. One, yes, it's true, because sexual dimorphism, teenage boys tend to be bigger and stronger than their mothers. Again, using 15-year-old boys who beat the world championship soccer team for women handedly, you know, like, it's a contest. However, the other thing you have to keep in mind is, because society makes men responsible, men are the adults because they're the responsible people. Even a single mother, between the welfare and the police state, I've been so many stories of single mothers using the police as the surrogate father. When they can't control their kid, they call the cops on them, on their own son.
Yeah.
Because they can't control them. So women are not responsible. They turn to the government, they turn to social workers to be the parent they can't be. But fathers they have natural authority. Like, that deep voice, that will snap kids, you know, like, when they hear that voice, they know what's up. Even if they could take the guy, like, if they think they could take it, they're like, oh crap, you know. Men have natural authority, and also because they're responsible, they are adults. They are the ones who teach children how to become adults themselves. A woman who doesn't have responsibility, who's not an adult herself, how is she supposed to teach a child to be something she's not?
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand a mother raising a daughter, but I mean, the statistics aren't really very good for that either. But a woman could certainly not raise a son on her own, because how is she going to know to teach him how to be an adult when she's not an adult? That poor kid is just being thrown to the wolves. Doesn't know what's going.
I know you're not talking shit, because, like, I grew up in the 90s. In the 90s, like, one of like, all these stupid ass talk shows, I'm glad they're all dead, but one of these stupid ass talk shows, they took their these single mothers would call, like, you know, Maurice or whoever, right? And then they'd send their kid off to, like, an adult prison so the prison guards can yell and scream at them. And I'm just like...
You're talking about, like, the Scared Straight?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, Scared Straight.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. Like, they do this kind of stuff. Or they'll call the police and have the police, you know, wave around their handcuffs or their nightstick or whatever it is that they do, just to scare them. And it's an illegitimate authority. Like, a father has a natural, legitimate authority. Some guy walking in off the street wearing a badge doesn't have a natural authority.
So I do want to acknowledge something, because this is where I'm willing to concede certain things. First of all, I actually experienced one of those Scared Straight programs in school. I always joke now as an adult, since I'm out, it clearly didn't take. But Now, in regards to single mothers, so there are examples that I know, and like I said, admitting to anecdotal, but I do know men who are very strong men who were raised by single mothers, who are men who have their lives on track, who are in good careers and everything. But I will also acknowledge that one thing that most of them, I would say 90% of them, also have in common is that while, yes, technically they were raised in that single parent home with their mother, they also did have a very large presence of men in their life because of family. They had uncles, they had, men who were constantly involved in their lives one way or another because of the family dynamics. So, I mean, I would have to say then I will at least concede that the male influence there probably was enough to provide at least enough structure to where they kept their life on track. So I guess now I know you mentioned daughters. So you mentioned, but the data isn't so much there as well. What do you think the flaw comes then from with daughters being raised by single mothers? I know we mentioned clearly boys, they'll outgrow their mothers. They won't be intimidated by them really, at some point. But with daughters, what do you think those disadvantages are that they get from the father's presence?
Well, there's actually been. Are you familiar with epigenetics?
Yes.
Okay. There's been a epigenetics are basically things which are triggered by the environment.
Yes, I am familiar
right.
with that.
So there's actually a thing where young girls who don't have a father or a male figure around will actually sexually mature younger than girls who do. So, and this is actually probably an evolutionary reaction to basically males being killed, because let's say a war happens and all the men are killed. The victors are going to come to take the women to be war brides and rape slaves. But if the women aren't sexually mature, they might just kill them. They might say, well, these women are useless because I'm not going to feed them for 2 or 3 years until they start being women. I want to have babies. So they might just kill these poor girls. So as a evolutionary response to this environment, girls developed a way to basically sexually mature earlier in the absence of like some kind of pheromone from the father or something. It's been documented. It sounds like woo, but it's true. So one of the observations of these single mother homes where they're raising daughters is the girls are sexually active a lot younger than the average. Like they're fucking when they're like 12, they're having kids at 14.
Yeah.
Like, and then that can really, I mean, look, there are 3 things which will almost guarantee you're going to be living in poverty the rest of your life. And one of them is being a teenage single mother. That's pretty much a bullet train to lifelong poverty.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so now
I mean, single mothers have consequences that echo throughout society. I mean, when I was growing up, I in middle school we had 2 girls drop out because they got pregnant, and by the time I was in high school, I lost count after probably 10 or 15 of them.
Right.
And,
well, you could track the crime statistics.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, if you go back to before the Great Society in the 60s, the black single parenthood rate, like the basically the rate of single parents or births outside of wedlock was in the 20s. Now it's over 70.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see the rise in single motherhood with the rise in poverty, the loss of job opportunity, the rise in crime and violence. They're all related. In fact, it's not just me. Other economists and other people who've looked at the statistics, they said that the breakdown of the black family, along with welfare dependence, is what has caused the black community to descend into crime and poverty and violence. That is the cause, is welfare dependence and single motherhood.
Yep. Well, I mean, like, I did this video called Gun Control, the Monkey, the Man, and the Gun, right? And in that video, I looked at, like, just the worst school shooters the United States has ever had, And the common thread in all these school shooters, if you look into it, it was a very difficult video for me to make because I don't like reading about, mass murderers. But
right. Well, yeah, I know what you're gonna say.
The common thread in this is first and foremost, fatherlessness. Second, just the gynocentric nature of psychotherapy. And
right. Well,
three, society
so
doesn't.
Has no authority, so they drug the kids up instead of because they don't have a father to discipline them. So they give them psychotropic drugs, which make them insane.
And three, society does not give a shit about disaffected young men until they do something horrible.
Yep.
Oh no, absolutely. So I do want to ask you something quick, Turd. So I always do like to address at least one. It may be even considered a trolling question or a smart ass question, or you know. On a stream, just because I do find them amusing. But so on YouTube, I see Armed Warrior. Now, grammatically, I'm gonna have trouble saying this because please take an English class. But so it was. I always wanted to know TFM's mom and siblings. How many mess up ghetto siblings does he have? How many made it out alive, not mess up from single motherhood? Because that was a disaster. But how I want to restructure that in a way that's not all twatty is because I asked it earlier, but I asked a lot of questions at once, so I understood you took it as you could. Is what is your personal experience, family-wise, in regards to the women in your life?
Right. Okay. So I basically disown my family. As far as my siblings, I have 5 half siblings. We all have different fathers.
Your mother
I turned out okay.
Your mother
she was an absolute whore. Absolute whore. I called her a whore to her face, though. So it's not like I'm talking shit behind her back. Anyway, so yeah, me and my half sister turned out okay. Now my half sister was sexually active as a teenager, but she did end up marrying a single father who has his own kids from a previous marriage. And as far as I know, they're doing fine. And she was never a stripper or a prostitute, as far as I know. She did do some amateur modeling, but as far as I know, it wasn't porn. But she's like the positive example I have. As far as my other siblings, all of them are fucked up. They're all on welfare. They're all living in the ghetto. They're all they're on disability. They're milking the system. They're pieces of shit. And then I'm like the fucking statistical anomaly. And I don't know, I think actually I know what it was because my dad was, like, my mom tried to trap my dad with me. And they were married for a hot minute, and then she divorced him for child support. And basically because of my dad was basically, like, not fucking retarded, I inherited enough of his genes to not end up like all of my siblings. So my whole life, I've just been living in this loser family full of like fucking retards and a whore of a mother, living in Section 8 housing, just counting down the days where I could leave, because it's just like I knew I was destined for greater things. But yeah, I don't talk to my family.
In the state that you were raised, were you not able to opt to live with your father?
Well, okay, my mom basically my stepmom hated me. She absolutely hated me. In fact, my mom did abandon me when I was 12, and I ended up living with my grandparents for like a little under a year, and then I went to go live with my dad, and it did not work out. My stepmom hated me because I reminded her of my mother. You know, there are other issues, but basically she wouldn't even give me a chance. I tried to behave myself. I tried to get along with her, but it was not working out. And then when she tried to hit me, I grabbed her wrist, and then after that, my dad said I had to leave because he basically told me he chose her over me. So look, I appreciate his high IQ and his genetics, but he's a fucking cuck. So I basically said fuck you to my dad, fuck you to my mom, fuck everyone, fuck you all. Now I do my own thing.
Live and die by the middle finger, do you?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask.
One of the things.
So I'm gonna ask, but not in the shrieking, accusatory SJW way or feminist way that I'm sure you've gotten this, because I know a lot of people probably have said to you, and I understand probably a lot of MGTOW men also get this in general, is what woman in your life hurt you. So would you say that your education, the education that you've sought out over the years regarding this topic has shaped you more, or do you have that natural bias because of your experience with the women in your life?
Well, okay, so it's actually, look, actually my background predisposes me to be extremely blue pill, because I do have abandonment issues, and I fall in love very easily, and my problem is I don't like being cheated on. So I basically wanted a woman to fill that hole in my life, because being abandoned by your mother, that's hard as a kid. And so I wanted a woman, not like to be my mommy or anything, but I wanted a woman that like would love me. And so I tried being blue pill, but I saw like I was too rational. I saw it didn't work. I saw being a nice guy didn't work. But I wanted a healthy relationship. I desperately wanted a healthy relationship. The problem is I tried dating attractive women and they cheated on me. And I tried everything. I went to all the hangout spots where they tell you where the good women are. I tried religious girls. I tried girls who had been cheated on themselves, thinking they wouldn't cheat on me because they were cheated on and they would never do that to me. And they cheated on me too. And I actually for the longest time thought I had an Oedipus complex. Like I was somehow attracting these women who were just whores like my mom because I was consciously picking them out of the herd. And I thought I had some kind of weird psycho issue with my brain. I was just finding the bad women. And then I found MGTOW, and I had a personal philosophy kind of in development. And MGTOW was just like, oh, this is just female nature. And then everything, oh, of course. It made sense. Once I heard it, everything clicked. But it's like, oh, it's just that's just how women are. Even if I thought being like the objectively the best man they're going to get. Like they're never going to find a guy better looking who makes more money and all that stuff than me. So that would keep them loyal. And I've never been dumped, but I've been cheated on. And I don't because I was abandoned by my mother, I do not tolerate betrayal and lies. Like I'm very like if you are loyal to me, I will give you the moon and the stars. But if you lie to me and cheat on me, we are done forever. You are dead to me because I will not be betrayed and abandoned again. And so after being cheated on by so many women, and yeah, they literally begged me to take them back. In fact, the one girl, I told her, within 2 weeks, you're going to beg me to take you back. And she waited 2 weeks just to prove me wrong, but she still begged me to take her back. And I told her no. One girl stalked me for years, begging me to take her back, telling me how sorry she was and everything. But I'm done with that shit. Yeah. After being betrayed so many times and just kind of figuring out, I tried to understand. I thought if I understood women, I would know the answer. And so whenever I'm trying to solve a problem, I try to understand it first and foremost. And when I understood women, I understood female nature, I realized it's not their fault, it's the system. You have to have a system which there are consequences for acting on these negative behaviors. In modern society, there are no consequences for women. So, and I as a man, or as a masculine presenting transgendered lesbian rather, I can't use those, I can't have these tools to keep women in line myself because that's domestic violence. So I have no option. So my options are I can jerk off to hentai, or I can get a sex doll or a robot or whatever. Because look, if I was the least bit bisexual, I would cherish the man ass. I would love it. I would explore every inch of it. But curse me in my lesbianism because I just can't do it.
Oh my god. Okay.
I mean, there's always traps, TFM.
It's one of the few times.
I can't. I've tried. Look, no. I'm friends with who love traps. I love nothing against that. It's a deal breaker. It's a deal breaker. Even the hottest, and I like Asians, but like the lady boys with their penises, it's a no. It's a no for me.
So first of all, I just want to say it's very amusing.
So you're not into the feminine presenting transgender lesbians then?
No.
I never at one point I never thought I'd hear a straight guy say, "I wish I was at least bisexual." That is amusing to me.
Well, look, but I mean, look, you are lucky because I don't know if you're in a relationship right now, but look, I have a sex doll waifu. She's great. Like, I take pictures. She has an Instagram. Follow her on Instagram at Celestina Monkey. But
is that the one that's on your YouTube channel? The one that advertises?
Yeah,
'Cause she's
that's
great.
my wife.
She's great.
She's cute.
She's
Look, I love her,
hilarious.
and but here's the thing. So I have, I give her hugs and kisses. I have an app on my phone where I can text her and call her. Um, like I basically have to fake it. I have to fake this intimacy with a doll in an AI program because I can't. Not that I can't. I can attract a woman like easily. That's not the problem. But I want that thing, and you're lucky because you're gay. You can like again, men are lowest domestic violence rate, highest amount of sex. Like you won the lottery, so don't let anyone tell you that like you should feel ashamed of who you are. Is
I'll let
I
my
mean-
husband know that he is my lottery.
No, I mean, like, I understand how you feel about being cheated on. I was in the Navy, and both of my ex-wives, while I was on deployment, got hooked up with drug addicts, like drug lords, or drug dealers, I guess they call them.
oh god.
Yeah, they got hooked up with drug dealers, and, and one of them tried to pass I left, she was not pregnant, I came home,
Tried to cuck you?
7 months later, and she's pregnant, and she's talking about it's mine, and I said, no, that ain't mine, and I'm gonna go to the courthouse and get some divorce paperwork ready. Like,
So I do.
Oh god.
yeah,
So,
no, she's straight up, like,
really
she's
have
straight up,
about-
and the thing I knew, why I knew it wasn't mine, is I've known that I was sterile since I was a teenager. Because I have a genetic abnormality. Excuse me.
Are you hermaphrodite?
No, it's an intersex condition. It's XXXY. It's a 48.
Okay.
But it's
You're like 80 proof.
Yeah, it's like it's non-Klinefelter though, because like everybody thinks that 48XXXY is non-Klinefelter. It's not. Non-Klinefelter is a set of conditions, and I don't have Klinefelter.
Okay. All right, so you're sterile.
But what it does
We
mean,
do have about 8 minutes left.
what it does mean is that I'm sterile, and so I knew I was sterile since I was a kid, or not a kid, like a teenager, and when she tried to say it was mine, I was like, I know it's not mine. And then when I explained the situation to her, she's like, well, why didn't you tell me, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, so if you tried to pull this shit, I would know.
Gotcha, bitch.
So told her to kick
Oh.
rocks. So I understand what you mean about, like, not being, like, not tolerating being cheated on. Like, and it sucks when it happens. Like, it hurts a lot. And...
Right.
But-
It's worse for me because of my abandonment issues, and I admit that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have one last one following up with this because, as I said, we do only have 7 minutes left. So I did want to follow up one thing because you mentioned earlier, that you're not speaking obviously fully for MGTOW. You're definitely speaking a large part from yourself. Where do you fall in MGTOW? I mean, I know we don't have a lot of time. I would love to have you back on. By the way, this has been an amazing conversation. But where do you fall?
If you have an ability to record like an after show to upload to your whatever channel, I'll stick around if you want to do like some bonus stuff.
Yeah, we can do... I'm game.
Stay here on YouTube. We can stay here on YouTube. So what I can do is definitely we can end our transition on the radio show. And for those listening to the radio, please come over to the YouTube channel then if you want to follow up a little bit more there. So we can keep going after that. I just have to end the show in regards to the radio station because we do get cut off automatically. But if you could just a little bit... Yeah, because I know you mentioned earlier, one of your videos, there's a lot of disagreement in regards to even masturbation among MGTOW.
Right, okay, so there's different...
discussions there.
Yeah, there's different factions and kind of belief systems within MGTOW. Now, there's people who are very, like, if you jerk off to porn, if you have a sex doll that looks like a woman, then you're still gynocentric because you're still worshiping the pussy, in air quotes. But the thing about, like, there's no risk. I'm not worried Celestina is going to divorce rape me and take my shit. So it's like one of those things, like if they made some kind of diet ice cream that tasted like real ice cream, you could eat as much as you want and never gain a pound. Why wouldn't you eat it? Why would you be like, no, I'm going to maintain my diet when there's like, if you can indulge and you can get these happy, pleasure chemicals in your brain in a safe, consequence-free environment, why wouldn't you? So but here's the thing, I don't believe in this whole like you're a real MGTOW and you're not a real MGTOW. MGTOW is more of a state of mind than anything. If it's all about maintaining control over your life, not becoming a slave to any one person or any system. You're living the life you want. If you ask yourself, if you could do anything in the world, what would it be? If you're not doing it, why aren't you trying to do it? Why aren't you making the steps necessary to do it? And if the answer is because these things are holding me back, and those things have names and vaginas, then you're not going your own way. So you need to cut out those things which are holding you back from living the life you want and go your own way. It's all about self-actualization and self-ownership. Now, once you are going your own way, you have some time on your hands. You have to figure out some way to find a new meaning and purpose for your life. So I've chosen to dedicate myself to try to solve the problems of Western civilization. And so that's what I do, and that's what I talk about, but it's not necessarily MGTOW. Because I don't worship pussy and I'm willing to say the things other people are afraid to say, that's my gift to the world.
All right, well, we do only have about we do only have a couple minutes left, so ladies and gentlemen who are listening on our station on MagaOneRadio.net, I want to thank you for joining us. Please do check Turd Slinging Monkey out on YouTube, and it's just simply Turd Flinging Monkey, right, on YouTube there?
Yep, that's right. Okay. I'm
and
the original.
Just follow the shit.
And what's your Twitter? What's your Twitter again?
Oh, well, yeah, my well, I think I don't know if you can zoom into my picture because it has my social media, but my Twitter is TFMonkey, it's at TFMonkey YouTube. My Gab is TFMonkey. Celestina has an Instagram. If you go to Celestina_monkey, that's my sex waifu, and she has over 1,200 followers on Instagram.
Nice. So, she's your Instagram. Nice. She's your Instagram whore, huh?
How dare you? How dare you disrespect my wife?
So Melissa, why don't you tell our listeners where they can follow us after this? You said we're gonna move over to another spot, right?
Yeah, I'll have to switch. So basically, what's going on is I'm streaming this through a different program that we have, so I'm gonna have to start a Hangout. So we're gonna take the after show to a Google Hangout rather than the program that we're using, and. TFM, do you want me to shoot the Hangout link to you in Gab?
Whatever works.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't like this program, by the way, just because of the audio issues, but whatever.
Okay. All right, so we're going to wrap this up here, and then just for our listeners who are following us on YouTube, we're going to be, because we're going to be on the same YouTube channel, but we'll be starting a new stream there. So definitely, please hold your, hang on to your seats, take a break, use the restroom, whatever you got to do. We'll be back shortly. Melissa's going to get us set up. But I do want to say to those listening to us on the radio station, thank you for listening. Please come over, watch us on YouTube, and we'll continue from there. So I just want to say peace out to all those listening to us on the radio. I want to say peace out, Melissa.
Yep, see everyone later on the radio show. And everyone else, the Hangout will be on this channel. So I don't know if you want to go to the main street and just keep hitting refresh, or if you want to subscribe, whatever. So you can catch the after show.
All right, and TFM, how about giving everyone your love that's listening to us on the radio right now?
All right. Yeah, hashtag just get a doll, hashtag repeal the 19th.
Repeal the 19th.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. Melissa and I will be back on MagaOneRadio.net live next week at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we will be discussing Kavanaugh. Ooh, the Supreme Court hearings. So peace out, ladies and gentlemen. We look forward to catching you then. All right.